Hello everybody, Professor Hall here. This is just going to be a quick video on camera movement, so let's just get right into it. So camera movement, there are 3 ways that it can improve your storytelling. Number 1, it can add kinetic energy to your shot. So if you need to kind of increase that energy of a scene, of a shot, of a sequence, whatever it is, movement can be a way to do that. Enhance emotion. So sometimes shots are used with camera movement to kind of increase the emotional impact that we get out of a particular shot, right? And then also it helps us control the perspective because we're controlling what we see and when we see it in a little bit different way than using cuts. So we'll talk a little bit about all 3 of those things in the next few slides. So adding kinetic energy, let's hit that first. So adding movement to any shot is going to enhance kind of the emotional impact of the character, of the shot. It just adds that extra energy to something that might not really hit home the way we want it to without it. Okay, so one of the basic kind of ways that, or one of the basic usages, you see this in procedurals and episodic drama all the time, is kind of the walk and talk. So let's take a little peek at what a walk and talk is and kind of how it affects or enhances what we're doing. All right, so there's just a basic walk and talk from an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Again, if those 2 people were just sitting at a table and just having a conversation with no movement, and we're just kind of cutting and then reverse cutting and then back and forth, it gets a little old pretty quick. It's something we've seen a lot. So a lot of times you'll see this in procedurals, kind of cop dramas and these medical dramas, where they do a lot of walking and talking. And a lot of times the walking is just to add energy to the scene, where if the 2 people were just sitting down, we wouldn't have that. Next thing is obviously in an action sequence, right? So an action sequence to kind of get the heart rate going, sometimes we will add a lot of energy. This next scene we're going to look at, I believe the first shot up is going to be from a film called Extraction. And you're going to see how it even changes perspectives. Initially, we are kind of an observer of it all, and we're kind of following along with our protagonist and the good guys, right? But ultimately, at some point, we get into the action with them. So it's a very cool transition, and this is the kind of stuff that's getting done more regularly. This film came out, I believe, during the pandemic, and it's really changed kind of how action films are being done. Next thing up is we're going to look at enhancing emotion. Emotion is the goal, right? So movement can reveal or enhance emotions that may otherwise go unnoticed. So I apologize for kind of bumbling all that. Again, emotion is the goal. And sometimes we can use movement to illustrate an emotion in a little better way by getting us closer to something or further away from something. There's a bunch of different ways to kind of like do that, right? Left to right movement versus right to left movement. So left to right movement feels more normal and traditional, just kind of the way our brains are wired, right? Right to left movement feels a little bit more against the grain. So it adds a little bit more kind of subliminal or subconscious tension when we see things moving right to left. Okay, a lot of people will say that if I ask the question, why is that the case? And people would say, well, because we read left to right. But that isn't necessarily the answer. The answer is it's just the way our brains are wired. Because it doesn't matter if you do a visual experiment showing left to right and right to left movement in countries where they read up and down or right to left, or to people that can't read at all or whatever. The majority of the people respond that the stuff that was moving left to right feels more normal, feels more right, even if it's the exact same shot, just flipped around one way and then flipped around the other way. All right, so in these shots that we're going to see, I think there's a Malcolm X shot which adds this kind of surreal feel where Denzel Washington playing Malcolm X is actually on the camera dolly moving with it, so it adds this kind of surreal floatiness to the scene. Then there was a shot from a movie called Yesterday where we're pushing in from a pretty good distance, pushing in fast on a character, and we can see a storm in the background, and we push in really hard on his face, and we can see like the emotion on his face. But that sense of urgency in that push in helps kind of generate that intensity as well. And then we start following him as he starts to walk. There's also going to be a sequence from A Quiet Place. Those beginning shots to A Quiet Place, a lot of them are moving left to right. Again, everything seems kind of normal and calm. There is one overhead shot that where everybody is moving right to left, and that just may be a little bit of a suggestion that something bad may be coming, kind of thing. Just kind of this shot that was placed there in the middle. But when we're talking about movement, we're not just talking about, when we're talking about left to right versus right to left movement, we're not just talking about the camera movement. We're talking about the people in the shots as well. So even when there wasn't moving shots, sometimes the people were moving left to right in that quiet place sequence. And then once something bad was going to start to happen, when it was a new moment, a lot of the kind of suggested movement in those shots started to go right to left, okay? And then controlling the perspective, right? If a scene is shot from 3 different angles, each will convey a slightly different narrative when we cut from one to the other to the other, okay? But when you do it as one flowing shot, you control kind of the timing and the pacing and the reveal of certain things, and it's got this little bit of energy to it because we're kind of flowing from one piece to the next. It flows a little bit different the way cuts do. Not to say that everything should be moving, that cutting isn't a useful thing. Cutting can be a very powerful kind of storytelling device when you kind of understand how to use it. But again, right now we're looking at movement. So what we're going to look at is a shot from, I think it's Chungking Express, which is a 90s film, Wong Kar-wai, and let's check it out. Again, it's just movement, and it's revealing what they want us to see when they want us to see it. Here's some stuff from Parasite. The downward motion is kind of alluding to how this Kim family is lower class. And then when you see that same guy, he's the son in the Kim family, going into that like fancy home, we're rising up to where the rich live, like they're above, right? And he's getting to peek into this world that's above his class, right? Then later in the movie, the Kim family has kind of infiltrated the Park family, who's the wealthy family. And when they've done that, a lot of the movement is horizontal. They're on the same level. We're not going up or going down. We are horizontal. So there's a shot where the Park family, the husband and wife, are talking in the kitchen, and it does a horizontal movement, although right to left, and you see the reveal of the daughter kind of listening to them. And then there's a horizontal movement shot of a gentleman walking with a bag of groceries. That's the Kim father. He's walking with the Park family wife, so the rich family, and they're walking into the kitchen as this woman's walking away coughing. And again, you're going to see horizontal movement suggesting, again, the Kim and the Park family are on the same playing field. And you see some fake blood being dropped in, and then the fake blood gets shown to the woman and she kind of passes out or whatever. Again, there's 2 matching push-ins on on Mr. Kim and then Mrs. Park. Again, suggesting like a connection between the two. They're on the same level. Then it goes to a shot in the rain where a family is running down a hill and the movement is going upward, but they're going downward, back down. That's the Kim family running away, going back where they came from, down below. And we're seeing that that's the downward movement. So when the Park family gets caught in their endeavors or kind of gets found out-ish, they kind of have to head back down where they came from, and there's a lot of downward movement. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. You can go back and look at those clips and kind of see that. You can also ask me questions, and we may look at it in class. And then finally we have the shot. It's a famous shot from Jaws, This is the dolly, the dolly zoom or zolly shot. Again, what we are doing is we are pushing in quickly with the dolly, so the camera is getting closer to the subject. And while it's getting closer to the subject, we are zooming the lens out to a wider lens, which is expanding the field of view at the same time, which gives us this very like vertigo-y kind of effect. So let's check this out. This sequence here is actually from a film called Kidding. You can see that it's almost like a time-lapse sequence, but done in real time. So it's like showing the evolution of this woman as she kind of matures and you know, starts an adult-type life. But what's cool about it is it's a combination of the camera movement being very precise and in precision with and in lockstep with a production design team who's recreating the set on the fly, with a lighting department that's making lighting changes, with the casting department with stand-ins. So sometimes you're looking at the woman and it's actually a stand-in, it's not actually her. And wardrobe and hair kind of changing what's going on with her, props changing stuff out, all together at the same time to create this kind of time-lapse feel. So that's a really cool look at what a really precision crew can do for you to create an interesting shot.
And Ricky. Curtains. Ricky. Dina. Go. Door 3 out. Close the door.
These are some ways that you can actually move the camera, right? The Dana dolly is a dolly that we may or may not have in class. It just depends on when it comes. I own one, and sometimes it's in use and sometimes it's not. So if it's not, it'll be in class with us. Doorway dolly, the one in the middle, that's something that we have, and it's a nice way to get nice and smooth moving shots. And then the last one, the hydraulic dolly, that's a Fisher 10 or Fisher 9 or 10 or 11 there. That's a professional style dolly. That's what you would see on a professional movie set being used to kind of take care of shots. And then some kind of do-it-yourself kind of versions, things that you can use, would be things like this, right? A wheelchair makes a fantastic dolly. Sometimes a skateboard can work. A wheelbarrow and an office chair could do the trick too in a pinch. Finding ways to just move the camera in a very smooth way is always going to look better than handheld. And this is just a quick shot of what we call the poor man's process. So this is a car sequence. In the shots and the still images, you can see it's kind of, they're using like a rear screen projection there to kind of make it look like it, but you don't actually need rear screen projection. You can just do it with different lights and lights passing and moving and stuff kind of moving around, and just as long as it's out of focus, it feels like there's movement. So there's many student films that I've been teaching a class, and the students have done this poor man process where the car wasn't moving, but they tried to make it look like moving shots, and they've done it really well. So this is something to take into consideration, as I think this is an option you can do in one of your free play days in cinematography, is to do a poor man's process shot. So if you want to try it, let's talk about it and see what we can do. It's a pretty cool thing. You can take a closer look at the diagram just by pausing the video. And then we got this stuff. This is just showing you kind of how they do moving shots professionally, right? So that top picture on the left, that's a process trailer. So we're actually towing the car. And down below that, you can see they're towing the car, and they got a bunch of lights and camera gear and all kinds of stuff. And that's how it's done on a lot of films. They do use the XR stage these days too, where we are, you know, on a stage with a rear screen, like LED screen, instead of like a rear screen projection. And they're actually projecting ish, and the camera is able to move because we can actually move the footage on the wall as well. But again, they'll use things like this process trailer. You can see in the middle there's an actual Porsche with a big crane attached to it to get some moving shots that'll swing and move. And then you have these like mounts that actually go onto the car, speed rail mounts where you can actually place the camera on the car. That's another way to get the stuff done. So professionally, these are the kind of tools that they use to do camera movement on cars. Nothing that we have access to, and nothing that you can act. I don't want you to try this stuff. I even looked into that process trailer thing for the film I was shooting over the summer, and it was about $2,500 at a base cost just to get going on it. So it's pretty pricey, and that was just for 8 hours of using the rig. So pretty pricey process. Again, hopefully this was helpful to you. Just trying to give you an idea as to why you might use movement, what you might be trying to get out of that movement. And the next part of that whole thing is becoming a good camera operator. So wanting movement and wanting it to be smooth and clean and crisp is one thing, and then being able to operate the camera while it's moving like that is a completely different thing. So it takes a lot of practice. What we're going to be doing in our exercise will kind of help us work through that. All right. So if you got any questions, let me know. Hopefully this was helpful for you.